Good morning everyone, and for today's lesson we will tackle all about cultural history. First, let's talk about our lesson objectives. Define cultural history and identify cultural issues in Philippine history. Examine how Philippine epic poetry and festivals are repositories of Filipino culture. Appraise the protection and conservation of our intangible cultural heritage. And lastly, formulate a good social media campaign to promote an intangible cultural heritage. Philippine cultural history looks at cultural traditions and interpretations of historical experience through the distinctive ways Filipinos of various ethno-linguistic backgrounds lived. It is the aggregate of past cultural activities such as rituals, customs, ceremonies, practices, traditions, and the like.
Most often, the focus of cultural history is phenomena shared by ordinary groups of people such as festivals and public rituals, performance traditions of epic poetry, and verbal forms.
These performances are mostly passed on orally from one generation to another, cultural expressions of science, art, craftsmanship and technique, and many others.
In sum, our culture is our heritage, tangible and intangible manifestations of our culture that we inherited from earlier generations.
We have to ensure the continued survival of our cultural heritage in the light of challenges that it faces today.
In this lesson, we will focus on Intangible Cultural Heritage or ICH. It is the representative and inclusive representations of our inherited traditions and practices that evolve in their environment.
Let's now talk about Philippine epic poetry. Our country has several oral traditions represented in myths, old sayings, communal songs for farming, folklore, superstitions, and more. However, the one that stands out the most is epic poetry.
There are special members of the society called binukot who recites epics for hours and hours during special occasions, with the protagonist of the story who travel in his adventures.
Felipe Landa Hocando, who is an anthropologist, was able to record some of the Philippine epics and encode them into the print material. Some of the most known epics are the Ilocano, Biyag ni Lamang, Ifugao Hudhud, and Maranao Darangin. The longest Philippine epic is Panay's Hinaliwod.
In 1963, historians and anthropologist Arsenio Manuel categorized Philippine folk epics to Christian people, pagan groups, and Muslim Filipinos. There are no direct translations of epic to local languages. There are local connotations that can give context to its meaning.
Maranao Darangin roughly means an epic song which is the same as Ulahing in Bukidnon, Pulangi, Kulaman, Bagobo, and Matigsalug. Hudhud and Sudsud means song. Manuel notes that epics have the following characteristics.
We have narrative of sustained length based on oral traditions revolving around supernatural events or heroic deeds, in the form of verse which is either chanted or sung, with seriousness of purpose, and lastly, it most embody the beliefs, custom, and life values of the people.
In 1582, Spanish military officer Miguel de Loarca referred to a folk epic in Panay Island as a way to preserve their ancient lore, which they sing in a very pleasing manner while plying their oars. He noticed that during revelries, singers recites the exploits of olden times.
Among the epics, only Biyag ni Lamang and Bicol Hanjong were recorded during the Spanish era. In 1914, anthropology professor Otley Beyer began collecting epics, noting that true epic poetry is today found chiefly among the pagan groups and the Moros, but fragments of pre-Spanish epics have been recovered among Christian Ilocos, Bicols, and Leyte Bisayans.
One thing to be seen in epics is that the elements that would seem to have been a foreign influence or addition may be seen in the names of characters such as Lamang's father, Don Juan, or the practices such as lamang's marriage as a sacrament. These have crept into epics due to the translation by the Spanish. The Philippine Folklore Society, founded in 1958, strengthened the faithful collection, translation, and publication of these epics.
The Ifugao or Hudhud was recorded from the recitations of several singers from different locations, resulting in different versions of the epic from the 19th to the 1950s. It follows the adventures of several characters from different perspectives.
We have Aligoyon at Hananga, Hudhud of Aligoyon who was bored by the rustle of the palm tree at Aladugan, and Hudhud of Bugan, but the most known is Hudhud ni Aligoyon. It tells the story of Aligoyon who is born in a village called Hananga. He was a notable young man who learned combat skills and chanting magic spells from his father, the village head Amtalaw. Aligoyon then went to battle his father's mortal enemy named Pangaiwan.
However, instead of facing Pangaiwan, he battled with his son Pumbakayon, who is also a skilled warrior. They fought for 3 non-stop years, and in the process, they developed an admiration of each other's skill. They ended their fight and drew a peace treaty among their villages.
With the peace treaty, their people celebrated. Aligoyon ended up marrying Pumbakayon's sister, Bugan, while Pumbakayon married Aligoyon's sister, Iginaya. We can see themes of social responsibility, love, harmony with nature, patriotism, self-sufficiency, and spirituality, resulting to be named a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO in 2001.
The longest Philippine epic, Hinilawod, comes from Sulod in central Panay, and allegedly, if it is continuously sung, it would take 30 hours. It's composed of 2 major epics of Labao Dongon and Humadapnon. Hokano recorded the epic of Labao Dongon with 3,822 lines and the longer Humadapnon with 53,000 lines.
Hinilawod tells the story of 3 demigod brothers, Labao Dongon, Humadapnon, and the Dualapdap. It features heroic feats, sacred rituals, and several themes that show what ancient Filipino society valued. An aspect of early Philippine society we have difficulty accessing due to the advent of colonialism.
In Mindanao, the missionary Frank Laubach was the first to introduce Maranao folk literature to the world in the 1930s, especially their darangen or epic song. However, it was not picked up and no one showed much interest in his work. Laubach noted that these epic songs have the great historical importance as they are the only important survivors of the ancient Philippine civilization.
A collection of 17 cycles and with Sanskrit elements, Darangen is likewise a series of length songs in sequence. Its most popular episode centered on Bantugan, the brother of King Madali, ruler of Pumbaran. Bantugan was so handsome and very popular that Madali, out of jealousy, decreed that no one talk to him again.
Bantugan, driven by sadness, begins to travel to foreign lands, and at one point he falls ill and dies, and is sent back to Bumbaran. Madali journeys to the heavens to bargain for his brother's soul, and upon return he is overjoyed to find his brother alive. As they celebrate the miracle, Madali's rival King Miskoyao attacks Bumbaran, and Madali orders his datus to fight the foreign vintas of the seas.
Bantugan joins the fight but is captured. He regains his strength and avenges the deaths of his warriors, and upon his return, Bumbaran celebrated once more. Like other Philippine epics, Darangen explores the themes of love, death, politics, and heroism. Its significance was honored as a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity in 2005 by UNESCO, as it reflects Maranao society and culture before they converted to Islam in the 14th century.
The folklore characteristics of these epics reflect a very old part of our history. The nuances between the versions also reflect the provenance, such that Manuel observed with the Hinilawod versions of the Highlands and Lowlands reflecting their respective cultures.
It emerged that the Highland was more dated and less influenced by foreign elements, always present in epics is the varying degrees of supernaturalism or heroism of the characters. Hudhud characters were closely to human capacity, while the epics from Visayas and Mindanao portray the characters as needing some sort of magical power they would use in battles.
With adequate examination and analysis and corroborated with ethnographies, epics provide important insight into Philippine prehistory. However, we must be cautioned that in interpreting, studying, and using epics, they are bound by changing epistemologies, institutions, disciplines, and technology.
Present-day Philippine indigenous communities endowed with verbal art are not only able to preserve and shape their narratives, but also gather wisdom from their folklore on several issues, some of which are ecology, gender, ethnicity, and social class.
All these epics are chanted generation after generation to reflect deep-seated lifeways and values, or as expressions of beliefs and ideals of a time so long ago but permeate into the present-day Filipino. Let's now move on to Philippine festivals and celebrations. Filipinos are familiar with fiestas or festivals. From barangay to the provincial levels, each has an assigned date in the year to get together and celebrate as one big community. The streets adorned with colorful buntings and people cooking the best specialties in big pots while everyone waits for the colorful parade to pass.
These are socio-cultural high points of the year, wherein visitors would come and join in this celebration, which is usually held but not limited to honor a particular patron saints of the Christian faith.
Some of the most known festivals are the Feast of the Black Nazarene, Feast of the Santo Niño, Sinulog, Ati-Atihan, Tinagyang, Panagbenga, Mascara, Kadayawan, Pahiyas, Mariones, and Zamboanga Hermosa.
The Santo Niño de Cube devotion is a symbol of the beginning Christianity in the Philippines. Magellan gifted a holy image to Queen Juana, baptized natives in Cebu in 1521. It was a significant union of the foreign image to the native beliefs of Anito and Anting-Anting, an acculturation of the Holy Infant into a system of indigenous folk beliefs and practices.
Folk practices such as the Sinulog ritual dance took in Catholic and Spanish symbolism and practices. The Santo Niño de Cebu devotion holds numerous stories of favors from and miracles of the Santo Niño, where there are around 5,000 versions of the Holy Infant.
The Spaniards thought of Christianity as a catalyst in gathering the Filipinos to a common faith, attitude, and behavior, all to advance Spanish administrative hold in all established reducciones.
The Spanish friars saw that they had to use the festivities to attract rural natives to the new faith established in urban centers. Hence, they made the festivals more colorful and inviting.
The purpose was to promote an impressive image of the grandeur and splendor of the Catholic Church, to anchor the Christian message more strongly in the minds of the population, and to outshine through extravagance and color the pre-colonial festival culture and customs.
No other event than the festival could gather maximum audiences to influence, this time not confined only to catechism but to Spanish interest. Slowly, resettlement under Spanish design gained momentum.
First performed in a church in 1637, the Una Gran Comedia de la Toma del Pueblo Corralat, Conquista del Cerro, later became a street drama titled Moros y Cristianos. It is both a visual narrative and a celebration of the Christian victory of Sebastian Hurtado de la Corquera over the Muslim Kachil Corralat.
This event transformed into comedia or moro-moro form of street performance during festivals. Its story evolved from Christian-Moro conflicts and carried similar themes, eventually ending with the Moro being killed or defeated. Thus, the antagonism between people based on religious beliefs also became codified in such performances.
Eventually, in the 17th century, even the Moros became curious about the festivities that happened in Zamboanga, that they too visited the church there. There were even fireworks and bullfights.
In 1641, Easter in Zamboanga celebrated the Passion and Death of Christ through masses, the erection of a holy sepulchre, and processions. The attendees, including Moros, were so impressed that they asked about the meanings of what they had just seen, making the Spanish priest elated.
Reinhard Wendt, 1998, stated that, in a study of fiestas and colonial culture, summarized festivals as follows. Priests donned their splendid robes, lighted processions with illuminated festival carriages bearing pictures of the saints, bejeweled in red with flowers, glowing in the light of candles and oil lamps, were an awe-inspiring spectacle.
Song and dance, theater and zarzuela performance, fancy dress parades, balls and festivals, banquets, fireworks and cockfights, sporting competitions and test of skills, as well as fairs, agricultural shows and trades displays increase the attraction of the festivals further still.
In the multitude of people which flocked together on these occasions, the Jesuits found an eager audience for their ideas and teachings. Their sermons were heard by an unusually large number of listeners. These people pressed forward in front of the confessionals, which boosted the sanctioning, disciplining, and norm-fixing effect of this sacrament.
Instead of merely preaching the Christian message from the pulpit or forcing its norms in the confessional, the padres were also able to dress this message in the processions, songs, dance, or plays, in festival decorations and architecture, or even in pyrotechnics.
Small bamboo cannons were not only fired to produce noise, they also saluted Madonna and the saints, marked with their explosions the highlights of a mass and accompanied processions.
At present, these folk Catholic festivals and celebrations are still celebrated throughout the year, even several times in a single month, but religious Catholic rituals are most simultaneously observed during the Holy Week.
The Passion, an epic narrative of the life of Christ, takes form in masses, songs, and even enactments, the most intense of which happens annually in Pampanga for around 60 years now.
In the reenactment of the crucifixion in San Pedro Cutud town, about 20 or so penitents walk barefoot while flagellating themselves, then carrying a wooden cross towards a hill. Upon reaching the hill, some penitents would be nailed to the cross and hanged on the crucifix state for a few minutes.
The Philippine clergy admits that this practice is not Catholic at all, but the auxiliary bishop of San Fernando, Pablo Virgilio David, stated, "I do not think it is right to close our doors to them just because they are more attracted to these folk practices than to our Roman liturgy, which they may find too foreign or cerebral."
When a penitent was asked why he devoted himself to the tradition for several years, enduring the pain, he said, 2 years ago, I said it would be the last time I do it, but every time I say that, my wife gets sick. I guess God wants me to continue this sacrifice as a lifetime vow."
The syncretism in the Cutud Passion is all too visible. The literal crucifixion is not Catholic, and getting sick was a warning or sign from God. The Moros of Mindanao had a different experience as they syncretized pre-Islamic beliefs and ways with official Islam in the 13th or 14th century, and even Christianity around the 17th century.
Bill Musk, in observing folk Islam in Africa in 1989, said, "Popular Islam has added a whole life way of animistic beliefs and practices. The use of the rosary for divining and healing, the use of amulets and talismans, the use of hair cutting and nail trimmings, and beliefs and practices of saint worship, the use of charms, knots, magic, sorcery and exorcism of demons, the practice of tree and stone worship, cursing and blessing. These are the many other animistic practices belie the gap between the theological religion and actual religion.
The Moros of Mindanao experience syncretism in three ways: indigenous, Islamic, and Christian. An exciting place to find a manifestation of this is the fourth pillar, or also known as Real Fuerza de Nuestra Señora del Pilar de Zaragoza in Zamboanga City, where the Hermosa Festival is celebrated every October.
The Catholics, Christians, and even Muslims came to visit Fort Pilar to light a candle, say a prayer, or make a wish. This should be analyzed in context. The Christians would not do the Visita Iglesia during Holy Week but would participate in the Hermosa Festival, and the Moros who participate are those more who link to their cultural pre-Islamic background.
Folk Islam is also manifest in opulent Muslim weddings that are so grand. The engagement alone shows a long line of vehicles decorated with bright colors and filled with all sorts of food and delicacies to be brought and offered to the bride's family. In Islamic teachings, though, the most blessed union is one that was conducted the simplest.
Discourse on festivals in Philippine history posits that these celebrations were breathers to a community that was otherwise preoccupied and constrained by everyday life, a chance for them to form and confirm identity. Festivals were also seen as transmitters of Spanish ideas, values, and concepts towards strengthening the Spanish rule.
But the celebrations and festival also became venues of mingling and sharing where collective attitudes were formed. Eventually, even the revolutionary movement, particularly the KKK, would link the Passion to evoke similar emotions of the suffering of Filipinos under the Spanish rule.
Studying festivals and celebrations, especially the IPs or indigenous people, reflects a portion of their history as well. Similar to oral traditions and epics, festivals are also considered elements of the country's intangible cultural heritage, or also known as ICH, that needed to be recorded.
In the study of Chan in 2017, as part of the Lenten celebrations, the Mariones Festival of Marinduque has exhibited various problems regarding a decreasing historical value, political intervention, and increasing detachment from the Marinduque community. If the self-identity of Marinduque locals to the Mariones Festival and the artisanship of making Marion masks cannot be realized and transmitted, the soul of the Mariones and the heart of the Marinduque can only be unconsciously lost and forgotten in time.
Festivals once became a double-edged sword used by the Spaniards to further their hold on the Filipinos, and it was in the very same festivals that the Katipuneros called toward freedom from the Spaniards. Through the centuries, festivals have picked up indigenous and foreign elements to make up a distinct Philippine festival culture, continuing to shape and be shaped by the values and attitudes.
As compared to tangible cultural heritage, such as a monuments, structures, and physical artifacts, intangible cultural heritage, ICH, is more challenging to preserve and protect. A host of issues affects the continued existence and practice of ICH.
For example, Baclob, the elaborating giving ritual system of the Subanen in southern Philippines, is affected by several issues such as weakened practice and transmission due to diminishing participation, youth interest, and low of significance due to the influx of other cultures in the Subanen's traditional homeland.
Like the Buklog, many ICH practices are slowly dying due to economic pressure, loss of objects of systems, new products and techniques, cultural globalization, environmental degradation, decontextualization, demographic issues, and negative attitudes. Now, let us ask ourselves, what are we doing to prevent the disappearance of our important ICH?
In the Philippines, the National Commission for the Culture and the Arts, or NCAA, acts as the safeguard of the Philippine culture. Internationally, UNESCO is a specialized agency of the United Nations. Includes in its programs areas the preservation of regional and cultural history and the promotion of cultural diversity.
The NCCA ratified the 2003 UNESCO Convention for the Safeguarding of the ICH, which sought to ensure the protection and conservation of intangible expressions of our customs and traditions, such as documentation of viable ICH elements, safeguarding and promoting viable ICH, fostering scientific, technical, and artistic studies, and providing technical assistance and training.
Some of our intangible heritage elements have been included in the proclamation of masterpieces of oral and intangible heritage of humanity, such as the Hudhud chant of the Ifugao in 2001, the Darangen epic chant of the Maranao in 2005, and the Punok Thoging ritual of the Ifugao in 2015.
The ICH unit of the NCCA lists elements under the Philippines Inventory Intangible Cultural Heritage through the NCCA. The protection, promotion, and inscription to the UNESCO of the country's ICH are managed and carried out.
Aside from the Hudhud chants of the Ifugao and the Darangen epic of the Maranao people of the Lake Lanao discussed in this lesson, another ICH element inscribed in the UNESCO list is the Punok, a tugging ritual participated by communities in Hongduan, Ifugao.
Punok is performed at the convergence of Hapao River and a tributary as a final ritual after harvesting rice, closing the agricultural cycle and inaugurating a new one. The three groups approach the Hapao River from different directions.
Participants garbed in the red attires of the Ayangan group traverse the terraces in a single file and build up tempo as they approach the riverbank, where they do tugging matches and exchange playful taunts.
The group that wins the games, according to traditional beliefs, will have a plentiful year and their rice granary will be full, while the loser will have a lean year. Punok reveals the three communities' coordination, camaraderie, sportsmanship, and creativity, especially with the production of the kinaa, a human-like figure made of rice stalks that is thrown to the river at the end of the ritual.
The Philippines has proposed numerous elements for inscription into the UNESCO list, such as the Ati-Atihan Festival of Aklan, the traditional boat building and maritime culture of Batanes and Tawi-Tawi, the Hinilawod Epics of Panay, the Apong Iru Fluvial Festival in Apalit, Piña weaving in Aklan, and the Batok tattoo making of the Butbut in Kalinga, among others.
The NCCA has organized an inventory of the country's ICH through the PIICH following the 5 prescribed domains. The following are the 5 domains and a sampling of ICH elements covered in the inventory. For the first domain, we have oral traditions and expressions, including language as a vehicle of ICH. We have the following epics: Biyag ni Lamang, Duliam, Apo ni Bolinayen from Ilocos Norte and Ilocos Sur and Abra, Ulalim from Kalinga, Hudhud and Alim from Ifugao, Origin Myth from Nueva Vizcaya, Upuan Etymology and Bangus Banter from Bulacan, Ambahan Poetry from Oriental Mindoro, Hinilawod Epic from Panay, Kudaman Epic from Palawan, Sondayo Epic from Zamboanga del Norte and Zamboanga del Sur, Darangen Epic Chant from Lanao del Sur, Agyo Epic from North Cotabato, and Ulaging Epic from Bukidnon. For the second domain, we have performing arts: Moros y Cristianos Street Drama, Passion, and Zarzuela Musical Theater from countrywide and urban areas, Moriones Festival from Marinduque, Kuratsa Dance from Samar, Singkil Dance and Kambuyok or Kabuyokasang Joust from Lanao del Sur.
The third domain is social practices, rituals, and festive events. Kapay Vanuvanua, Kapagdeng, and Fibonungan from Batanes. Agnasa from Ilocos Norte, Padapadakam ritual and Atang ritual from Ilocos Norte, Sur, and Abra. Palaan ritual from Abra, life cycle rites, Kalinga meat sharing ritual, and Pechen Pudon Budong from Kalinga, and Wak, Death and Textiles in Bontok, Bayao chant from the Mountain Province.
Uwa rite, Uhag ritual, Uyawi, and Hagabi rites from Ifugao, Kadit Prestige Feast from Banguet, Mafusi from Cagayan, Angona Festivals from Rizal, Putong or Putungan from Marinduque, Sayo and Peña Francia Fluvial Festival from Camarines Sur, Panudlak Agricultural Rituals from Mindoro.
Pagbuyis ritual and Pagdiwata ritual from Palawan, marriage rituals from Bukidnon, Pagkumbiti marriage rituals from Surigao del Norte, rites of passage from Davao del Sur, Munimum ritual from South Cotabato, Pagana Maranao from Lanao del Sur, Kagunting rite of passage from Maguindanao and Cotabato provinces, and lastly, Bloklog rites of Zamboanga del Norte and del Sur.
For the fourth domain, we have knowledge and practices concerning nature and universe. We have Hanunuo Mangyan natural phenomena rituals and Hanunuo Mangyan supernaturals from Mindoro. Tagbanwa or Palawan cosmology from Palawan. Bilaan sacred mountains from Davao del Sur. Bilaan astrology from Sultan Kudarat. And Hama Mapun constellation from Tawi-Tawi.
For the last domain, it is the traditional craftsmanship. We have Philippine earthenware pottery and traditional boat building and Philippine maritime culture from countrywide. Traditional boats in Batanes, Sinandumparan, Ivatan house types, and Yakub from Batanes. Salakot and other headgear from countrywide. Bubo and other fish traps from Ilocos Norte, Sur, Abra, and La Union. Sake broom making from Kalinga, mountains, terraces from Ifugao.
Morion Headmass from Marinduque, Torongan Royalty House, metal casting with wire templates, Sari Manok, Malong Tube Skirt and Lagkit, Tobiran and Lakban from Lanao del Sur, Peace Siabit from Sulu, Tepomat from Tawi-Tawi, patterns of culture in Philippine traditional textiles, and backstrap weaving from countrywide.
There is presently 367 ICH under the PIICH. Listing is but one strategy for these ICH elements to be recognized, preserved, and promoted. A lot of effort needs to be made to ensure that these intangible manifestations of our culture will not be lost to oblivion.